Native Instruments has just dropped a new controller. It is the MX2. Effectively, it's a replacement for the Traktor Kontrol S2, which was a controller that was the entry-level controller in their range that's now been replaced by this one that, as you can see, the design and the look and feel have been thoroughly updated to match the recent batch of new gear they've launched, such as this one, the X1, and also the Z or Z1. So this is what it looks like. It is large compared to other entry-level controllers. I'm thinking things like the Alpha Theta DJing Flex 4. This is a little bit bigger than that, which means they've got more room to play with. The jog wheels are bigger. Very industrial feeling unit. It's got the same matte plastic finish that the other controllers they've launched recently have got. It's got the understated design language where instead of the whole pads lighting up, they just have this little circle that lights up, which makes the whole thing feel, as I say, quite understated, quite workmanlike. It looks a bit dull on camera. It's actually quite nice in real life. So as an entry-level controller, this thing has got entry-level build quality. It's plastic. The faders are quite scratchy, as you can hear. That said, it's as good as anything at this price point. It's what you would expect. Where they haven't skimped is in the sound card. It's got a full high quality 24-bit sound card in there, which means it's going to sound good, which is good because Traktor sounds good. Traktor is software that does sound very good. And so they've respected that strength of the software by making sure the hardware is up to the job. So there's lots of other thoughtful touches. I think thoughtful really is the best word to describe this unit. So as we talk around it, I'll point some of those out. I'm actually going to start round at the back of the unit and talk you through what we've got here. Well, firstly, this light, see the blue light? This controller's got lights down both sides of it in much the same way that the other units they've released recently have got lights on the bottom, right? And they are blue when the track's playing. They change to green when you've got a loop playing, and they go red when you're out of sync, and they flash red when you are getting near the end of the track. So again, something that's come across from the other units they've been releasing recently there, and quite useful as well. All the lights can be remapped, by the way, in the software itself. There's a special screen in the software that lets you do that here. An awful lot of control you've got over that, should you want to. So back to the back of the unit. So past the lights, we've got our output here for the usual RCAs, but there's also an output at the back here for a 1/8" mini jack. So rather than have professional XLRs and booth outputs and all that kind of thing, they've gone for the entry level and said, you know what, people are going to want to plug little speakers in that maybe don't have anything other than an 1/8" input, so we'll give them a mini jack output. Of course, you've got to be careful with those speakers because most speakers that consumers buy nowadays have latency even when they've got line ins, but that is for a completely different video. Beware though, when you're buying speakers, we have training on that elsewhere. Right, also down here at the back then, we've got our microphone input. Microphone input has its own volume on the back here, which I think is a hardware volume control. But the good news is the microphone is fed through the software itself. So when you are in the audio settings here, you can choose how the microphone is routed and all that, which is nice. That's something you quite often don't get on entry-level controllers. Quite often they're kind of very cheaply wired to the outputs, but nowhere near the software. Not the case here. That also means, by the way, that you can have a microphone on-off button right here on the top of the unit because it's all MIDI controlled and running through the software. Nice. Also around the back then, we're going to move from there along to here. Here is our input for the power, because this has to have power. You can't run this off USB power. So there's one maybe slight surprise. It does mean that the audio card is nice and loud and all the LEDs get the power they need, etc. The other surprise maybe, it's a USB-C. Only Alpha Theta have dared to put USB-C rather than a USB-B onto DJ controllers up until now. Well, now it's been done here by Native Instruments as well. So there's nothing around the front of the unit, just a headphones input socket. However, on the top of the unit, lots to talk about. So let's move to that now. Okay, so it is a 2-channel unit, but it can be used to control 4 channels of Traktor. I'm not too sure how actually. There's no obvious layer button, but they say it can, so we'll believe them on that. So this is the mixer section. The mixer section has some nice VU meters here. So these are pretty granular. You can see what's going on with them. It's also got a peak meter there, so you don't over power the thing. And each VU meter is for each channel, so you've got your left and right, so you can use them to balance when you're mixing. Down the very middle of the mixer, So our main output, our headphones mix and our headphones volume. And then we've also got down each side the usual 3-band EQ. These are to assign the effects, which we'll get onto in a minute, because this is standard Traktor fare, but if you're used to other controllers, you might not have seen effects working this way. One of its strengths, if you're into the way they do things. Gain controls at the top. And so down here, we've got nice big filter knobs. Now to turn on the filter, you press the filter button there. Not forgetting to press effects. But this is where it gets interesting, because with filter on, I can turn filter on or off on the other channel as well. But these are the other 4 effects which are assignable in software, but they're quite nice out of the box. Let's have a quick listen to those. So you can hear these two have got a filter on them, but with another effect as well. This, I think, is a bit crusher. Let's have a listen to this. Actually, noise. That sounds like a bit crusher. The point, though, is you can change these to what you want, and really nice, if you hold down the effect and press the effect button, then that effect is now set to that one, but this one is remaining set to this one. So you can put these effects per channel, which is something that you don't get on most DJ gear. You select one, and it's across both channels. So headphones monitoring and the slightly scratchy up faders, as we've already talked about. By the way, these faders are not, these are just as you would expect them to be. Nice bit of tension in them, and yeah, I like the pitch faders. And then the crossfader. None of this is replaceable or anything. This is an entry-level unit. Let's then move across to here, cover the basics, then I'll talk about these at the top here. So 2 big jog wheels. You can set the jog wheels to either turntable or to jog mode. And so if you don't want to have that scratch mode on the jog wheel, you can turn it off like that. And then when you're playing, you don't have the scratch on the top, just to stop you jogging it by mistake. So this is Flux. Flux is the same as slip mode on other DJ gear. It lets the track continue, in effect, playing underneath when you do something on the decks, and then when you finish, it will carry on from where it would have been. Turn it off, and you're literally moving through the track. Reverse. Notice that reverse was engaging Flux when I pressed it, and that means that you can use reverse as a performance tool, because it will jump back to where it would have been afterwards, after you've pressed it. So moving down here, I think they do this bit really, really nicely. It's the beat jump and the loop controls. So the loop controls will give you a loop by pressing the button. Halve and double it by turning the knob, turn the loop off like that. Whatever the loop is set to, this will beat jump to. In other words, it will move through the track in time by whatever this is set to. That's set to 16 beats. This will beat jump by 16 beats. That, by the way, will also turn the loop on and off. So it's almost like a loop on off button on each, but they have a different thing going on when you turn them. Nice. This is the key lock on and off. It just makes the key not change when you move the pitch control. Here we've got our sync and master deck buttons. So the pads have been done a little bit differently. So we've got our usual hot cue here. You can set hot cues and you can delete hot cues by pressing shift, and they'll go away like that. Also, you can put loops on there. This button here is for the stems. You can see I've got a stems track loaded here because we've got these 4 different stems here. Now the software takes a while to analyze the stems. We've covered Traktor software, of course, elsewhere on this site, but when you do have stems analyzed tracks, it shows you it's a stems analyze track down here, and then when you load it, you'll get the stems, and this button here will be lit. That means that you can control the stems using these buttons here. Them all turned off, turning them on one by one here. What's nice about this as well is you can hold down this button here for any particular stem, and you can turn this to change the filter. It gives you a filter on the stem, and turn this one to change the volume on the stem. Now they're very, very small little controls in the software that show you that. They're here. So you've got to have good eyes, or you've got to be keeping an eye on what you're doing. And it does feel slightly weird using a notch control to control volume and filter. But hey, it's there. If not, you don't have to use it at all. But it's nice to see this thinking. I said it was a thoughtful controller. It's just something a little bit different there. Now this button here is for the pattern player. The pattern player is not loaded on this deck. And I'll explain that now as we move to talk about the effects. Obviously, you've got your cue and play, pause buttons here as well as in most controllers, and your shift button. So that leaves us with these and the rest of the pads. Let's talk about the pattern player then. So the pattern player is something that's built into Traktor software that is effectively a sequencer. It gives you sets of kits, some of them designed by kind of pro DJs, some of them given to you by Native Instruments, that you can program like step sequencer patterns into Traktor and have it synced along with your music. It's just one of those things that differentiates Traktor from some other software, and the way that they've done it, it's quite intuitive, quite easy to access. And so that's where the effects tie into it, the effects units at the top here. So Traktor has retained the idea of having two effects units, if you like, which have their own sets of knobs and buttons to control them. And the effects units can be assigned to each of your decks using these buttons at the top here. So if I want this deck here to be fed through whatever's going on this effects unit, I press that button there. I can have it on both of them at the same time, by the way. If I want this deck here to be affected by what's going on this one, then I'd go like that instead. And the same with this deck, right? So that's the idea here. This used to be all controllers, by the way. When Alpha Theta, Pioneer DJ back then, started to introduce controllers that didn't have that, people were like, oh no, you're taking away all my effects. But ultimately, there's now a choice. Some controllers stick with this method. All Traktor controllers stick with this method. But when it comes to the pattern player then, if we have this engine here set to pattern player, and you can choose what this is set to by holding down shift and pressing this button here, which will cycle through the various things that are available. If I go cycle to pattern player, it turns green, and now this button here I can light. Now this controls the patterns that are set on the pattern player here. So currently I've got an 808 kit set on the pattern player. I can start the pattern playing by tapping this button here, and on the software you can see at the top there, top left, when I turn this knob here, it increases the pattern's density. When I turn this knob here, it changes the pitch of the pattern. And you've got other controls as well for changing other things about the pattern here. So again, we've covered the pattern player elsewhere in our training. However, I want to show you how it ties in with that button there, because this button here now lets you program the pattern. So here I've got showing me on here what the pattern is set to. Press it again and it will show me the other half of the pattern, if you like, because it's a 16-step sequencer. So there's the first 8 steps, here's the second 8 steps, and it will show me where I am in the pattern as well. Press play and you can see the pattern will fly through here, right? So nice. Again, thoughtful design there. And the final one is, they call it flux loop. It's basically a beat loop where it will loop momentarily like this. If you switch this to effects, then you can either have a single effect, or you can have multi-effects there with less control over the effect than you would have on a single effect, which has always been in Traktor, and this is nothing new, this way this has been implemented. So a Traktor controller, a full Traktor controller, not a little modular controller like this, a full Traktor controller. Is it any good? Yes. If you want an entry-level controller for Traktor, this is now the one to get. I'm sure you probably can't get the S2 anymore anyway, but it's been updated. It's got all the features to hand that Traktor is majoring in its software now. Is it something for you? If you're into electronic music and you already like Traktor, it's a no-brainer. If you want it as a second controller, or you want to get involved in the Traktor ecosystem, Traktor software, of course, ultimately is what this is all about, because all this unit here is doing is controlling the software. And Traktor software is a whole other story. It's got lots of things that it's doing better than ever. The beat gridding's better than ever. It sounds as good as ever, but it still has things which it's head scratchingly behind the times with. So if you want to do stuff like DJ with video, if you just want the screen resolution to look like a modern piece of software, it just doesn't. So Traktor's come on in leaps and bounds. Again, it's another story talking about Traktor software, and that's not what we're going to do in this video. Ultimately, they've updated their entry-level controller. So the question that arises then is Is it the start of updating the next ones up? Because Traktor S2, S3, S4 was the old range. They've already replaced the X1 and the Z1. Now we've got the MX2. So are we going to get an MX3 and an MX4? I have no idea. However, if you want a second controller or an entry-level controller for Traktor, this is a thoughtful choice. It's got great sound. The fact that it's powered by mains means that you don't have to worry about it going quiet on you, or the audio card making compromises or anything like that. So they've stuck to their strengths as far as that's concerned. The control over Traktor is deep. It's nice to see these panels in the software. So not only do you get that lighting panel that I showed you earlier down here for the colors, where you can change the way that the controller looks, but you can also change other stuff that's specific to this controller when it's plugged in here as well. So as you can see, we've got the browse controls. You can have them temporary or toggle for the views and so on. The mixer effects again, and also the tempo faders if you don't like the idea of soft takeover, where your tempo faders remain absolute when you're switching between decks. This is a nice feature which other software doesn't actually have there as well. Anyway, that's all there for the MX2 in the software. I like the way you could change the key of the track by holding down the key lock button and turning actually either of these in the same way that either of these, when you push them, will trigger the loop. Either of them will change the key like this. Of course, this is something I think people will use creatively, not just to change the key of the track, because it's so immediate there. So things we didn't like. I thought they could have done more with the stems, to be honest. You can turn them on and off and control volume and filter with them, but I just think a little bit more with the stems might have been fun. And also just a small thing, a really small thing. I guess they're not expecting you to use this with other controllers such as this one here. But when you butt these against each other, like this, they're just a slightly different height. So, again, maybe they're not expecting you to use a Traktor setup that is their modular controllers alongside the new one. But no, I think they missed a bit of a trick there, possibly. It's a good update. We like it. It's the Traktor MX2. There's a written review which goes into more detail about a lot of these things over on the site. Of course, we have a Traktor Made Easy course which you should check out if you want to become a Traktor ninja, and watch out for more material around this and other Traktor controllers on the Digital DJ Tips website and YouTube page. Meanwhile, for me, Phil, here in the studio, get good, get out there, make the moments, and I will see you very soon. Bye for now.